All righty. We're going to call the meeting to order at 7:02, 1, somewhere around in there.
6.
It's on.
I would like to make my normal announcement of please use your microphones, speak into the microphones close to you, and turn them off when you're not speaking, please.
Okay, are there any other announcements? Does anybody have to make? Okay, moving forward, any public appearances? Anybody from the public to speak? Okie dokie. Moving on, we are going to go to closed session, and we will reconvene ASAP. All righty. Okay, everybody's here, I guess. Okay, reconvene and report on the closed session. No action was taken. So we're down to 6.1. The commission will review the updated budgetary reports and recommendations prepared by the staff. Which means Ken.
The budget stuff starts on page 4. Page 4. The staff went back and redid some of the budget based on the discussion with the commission at the last 2 meetings. The main difference is that we took the Sunday hours out of the proposed 1920 budget and reallocated the costs that were associated with that. And you can see that on the top of page 5. There's a category there that says differences between April 15th and March 26th proposed budgets. The elimination of the Sunday hours, and that was approximate savings of $750,000. That was opening the branches, all the branches starting January 2020, so for a half a year. We've also added back an additional $100,000 of revenue for fees on lost items, while we're proposing to do away with fines in this budget and ongoing. There will still be some fees on lost items, and that amounts to about $100,000. And we've also moved the purchase of the new people counters to fiscal 18-19, and that's a savings of approximately $50,000. So the way we allocated those funds, $900,000, we allocated an additional $350,000 to the Healdsburg refresh, which brings that total up to $700,000. We made an allocation to the capital improvement fund for future purchases of vehicles and computers. We've increased the supply budget by $30,000. We've increased in the buildings and furniture $150,000. We've included a new position based on the report from the fund development consultants. So we've got a fund development manager in the proposed budget with salary and benefits approximately $130,000. The allocation for online services of $100,000, and then increase to materials for the Roseland collection of $25,000. So those are the items that have changed. Going down through that page, There's really no change that isn't mentioned above there. And so I'm wondering if, the numbers, the detail on the pages that follow that reflect everything that I just talked about. Those are the differences between the two budgets. I've included on page, what page is that? On page 7, the commission priorities and how staff is proposing to meet those priorities. The only change on that was on the bottom of extending service hours. The only extended hours in this budget as proposed are the expanded hours for the Roseland branch. As we said, we've taken the Sundays hours out, and they'll be addressed in the future using the data that we hope to get from the new strategic plan, the staffing analysis, and along with the new people counters that we're going to get installed by the end of this fiscal year. The other thing that, I'll ask if there's any questions on those items. You got me to? So Jason, or Mr. Commissioner, I'm sorry.
So the $750,000 is reallocated.
Yes.
My question is, I know we were concerned about having funds available for Sunday hours this year. Will the same concern be present next year? And if so, should not some of those funds be in a fund for Sunday hours? A type of reserve fund?
That's a way we can do it. The reserve fund, the only thing about a reserve fund is you hate to put it, you hate to use reserves for ongoing expenses. So that would be.
I'm just saying, if we're going to have concerns next year for Sunday hours, the same concern we have this year, could we not anticipate that and try to save up for that? I mean, I don't know the way, like a piggy bank. I mean, I don't know how under what auspice it would go under, but.
Well, for operational expenses, like I've said, it's not good to use things out of the fund balance for operational ongoing expenses. It's good to use it for one-time expenses. So we have to figure out a way operationally how to make that work. Now, that may mean next year that we do less for the buildings, or we spend less on materials, or we spend less on programming. Okay, but that's really where it comes down to.
Okay, thank you.
Wait a minute. I'm passing out a thing right now. It's the list of the reasons that the Finance Committee came up with. You can go down that way. For the not doing Sunday hours this year, and that might help some people. Okay, so there was a couple of hands. Andy?
Ken, thank you. I'm back on page 5.
Okay.
The differences between the April 15th and March 26th proposed budgets.
Yes.
In the section that's designated as revenues, says eliminated fines, $275,000. I assume that means, assuming that we approve the staff recommendation, which we'll be deciding on today. Is that right?
Yes.
Above that, in the first set of bullets, it says addition of $100,000 of revenue for fees on lost items. Is that also based on the assumption that we'll approve the policy and therefore be able to collect fees or more fees for lost items?
I don't know if that would be increasing the fees for lost items. That would be what we currently project to collect even this year on lost items. So the difference, the $100,000 is the difference between the two budgets. We added back in $100,000. Down below, it used to say we've eliminated $375 for fines and fees. Now it only says $275.
Okay, so it's eliminating the fees on late items, but not eliminating fees on lost items.
Correct.
And that's the difference between the two. Thank you.
There was a second hand down there at a moment. Okay, Barbara?
Yes, Ken, just for the record, so this will fully fund the Healdsburg refresh. We already did $350,000 50 aside, and now we're doing another 350? And will that fully fund the Hillsburg refresh?
Yes, that should, unless costs go up drastically, given the square footage, the refreshes with the paint, the carpet, the new shelving and things like that, it should do the same thing it did at Northwest and Cloverdale.
Right. That's why I wanted to maybe to mention, since it's your last meeting. So do you remember what that roughly is, that dollar amount per square foot, just to keep it even for all the different branches? There's Dave.
That square foot price?
Yeah.
It's a combination of square foot and need for the grant. So 750 was the original estimate, but 700 was workable.
It would be good.
Also consider eliminating any kind of construction of refreshes, because that triggers all these ADA stuff that we need to avoid. So seeing Northwest was around 680,000. That was with construction, so without increasing the square footage, 700,000.
So I misunderstood then, because I thought we were trying to keep things proportionate to each branch based on the square feet.
It's not, basically what we have in there, that's how we've been funding this before. Square foot per square foot changed since Measure Y too, so like Cloverdale have all these figures that off the top of my head, $60 a square foot, and Northwest was at 90 square foot, Petaluma's I think in there at 72. This one will be, I don't know, 70.
Excuse me, could you use a microphone, please, so that we can get this recorded?
So in terms of like the equity, and we're not worried about that so much because we're taking a need as well as square feet.
Well, yeah, and it's impossible for us to get the square footage price equitable, since Measure Y money came in after a refresh already happened.
No, I know that. I just thought from earlier discussions, we were really trying to keep things roughly proportionate as we went through this.
They're very close, yes.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I just want to go on record with that. Thank you.
Question, please. Sorry. Okay. I want them to finish their statements. Okay, Karen?
Thanks. Do we have a description of what these refreshes entail?
Yeah, it's new furniture, new carpet, new shelving, new finishes.
Thank you.
Okay, Stephen?
So based on that, then I'm confused. So then how do we differentiate the other one that's listed under here, increase in building and furniture for $150,000? So is that somehow delineated by branch, or is that just a lump sum pool that branches can pull from?
No, we have a list of items, probably a very long list of items that people, branches have requested, and we prioritize those in the management team meeting and go from there.
Jason?
Question on the Petaluma refresh. The amount of $1,340,000 for the branch renovation, is that an additional, or is that what was anticipated?
The additional was from the surplus.
Right. So this budget, this didn't change. How
No.
much? No. Okay.
That's about the same amount of square foot per square foot that Hillsburg has.
Okay.
The difference in they have a lot of Friends money that they're adding on top of that. So.
Oh, the Petaluma branches?
Right.
Okay, that's where the difference is. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Barbara?
Have we talked about page 7 yet? Page 7. Not
Yeah,
sure where you stopped.
That was in both March 26th and then the April 1st
Right.
meeting. And it just explained what we were doing to to address the 4 priorities of the commission.
Right.
And the only thing that's changed on that, like I said, was down under provide extended service hours. We took the Sunday hours out, and that's
Right.
what's changed.
Right. So it wouldn't be inappropriate to ask a question right now about page 5, 7, I mean. We've been talking about, and I know a lot of people have been working on this issue of who pays the lease for Roseland, and I know we, currently haven't put one in place. I did read in the newspaper this week that Santa Rosa's finances had taken a big uptick, and they were in much better position than they thought they were before they relooked at everything. So I was wondering if we could have an update on that situation, about whether we've been able to move into a higher tier, or I don't have an update.
I think the update is scheduled at the regular meeting, the May 6th meeting for Roseland. Yep.
May 16th city? Santa Rosa?
May 6th Library Commission meeting.
Oh.
The Roseland update is on that agenda.
And then we'll have the very latest from the Santa Rosa budget then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll have the latest, and whatever the latest is as of that day will be presented.
Okay. Thank you.
Tom?
On page 5, the top, I eliminate Sunday hours, $750,000. Do we think we would be in any position at some time later in the year to start initiating Sunday hours, that we should try and save some money for that if we get counts and we can figure out we want Sunday and not Friday nights or this or that or the other thing? And now, if we are, I was wondering if we should put it in a tentative, add $350,000 or $75,000 to OPEB in the second half of the year, and if we don't do that, then we can do some Sunday hours. It's just dreaming. I don't know if it's realistic. It probably isn't.
Well, we can do anything. I mean, as far as that goes. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to your question there. But, I think as we talk through the Sunday hours, as we talked through it at the April 1st meeting, there were a lot of moving things, and one not being insignificant at all is that our permanent library director has only been here a month, and so she's really trying to get her feet under and understand what's going on. There's also a lot of the data that we expect to use from the strategic plan, the staffing analysis, and other things that would determine what hours would be most beneficial to open and how many that would be. Now, all that stuff could come together sooner than the next budget cycle, and if it does, then at that time, I think staff would bring it to you all and see what would work.
I suppose my question to the commission is, do we want to consider putting aside some money in some place that would be a one-time use that we don't have to do if we decide we want to do Sunday hours or something like that, or additional hours, I should say? And it's just a question. If nobody picks up on it, that's fine.
That is similar to the discussion we had earlier about putting stuff aside in the fund balance. You don't want to use that for operational costs. You want to use, if you have fund balance set aside, you want to use it for one-time things. So if the decision is to open more hours, then it needs to come from somewhere in the operating budget, like materials, buildings, programs. There's not too many places you can get it from.
Actually, my suggestion is that we do try to do that with $300,000 right now. And again, I say, and I don't think anybody's raised their hand. If nobody wants to do this, that's fine.
There's also 3 items on this list, just that I saw right off the bat, that we discussed in the finance meeting. Getting a strategic plan in place, again, is going to probably take 9 months to get done, at least. Defining the service areas, getting those assessments and reports, that's not going to come quickly either. So I think we'd be, and then add to it the what Ken said about the one-time deal and, the way we use our money. I personally believe that putting it off and not trying to invest in it is probably the best option. Anybody else have any comments? Jason?
I guess I understood Ken's point, and I'm fine with the budget as is. I understand Commissioner Hauser's point, and I had the original point. But I think where I see is if we rely on it this year, we're not going to have it operationally every year. So if we put funds aside now, we have to be able to sustain those Sunday hours from year to year to year. So funding them from operations needs to be a consistent basis and not an augmented basis. So I think, I like the budget as is. My one question is, with a strategic plan, are we rewriting it completely from ground up, or are we just updating it?
Anne, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, we need to essentially start over with the community input. It's been 3 to 5 years. It's time to survey all of our communities, all of our staff, all of our elected officials, our partner organizations, see how we're doing, what we could be changing, what the priorities should be for best service to our communities going forward. So in a sense, yes, we are starting over.
So I understand the reason to start over is the priorities may have changed. Are we not happy with the past one? Are we happy with how? Is there going to be an assessment of what went right with that last strategic plan, what went wrong, and just an overall assessment of it?
Yes.
Before we update?
I think, yes, that will be part of it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Andy?
Ken, I have 2 questions for you on page 6, please. The first relates to the category of building improvements, where it says portion of Healdsburg renovation, $700,000. I assume this is the portion that would be allocated during this fiscal year. What percentage, or what's the total allocation that's planned for the refresh? That's my first question.
Okay, the total allocation is $700,000. I should have changed that word. Prior to this, we had a portion of Healdsburg renovation at $350,000, but now we've increased it to $700,000, and so it's not a portion anymore. It's actually the Healdsburg refresh is in the budget.
And so is it therefore anticipated that that refresh will be, although it's not scheduled to start until next year, that it will be completed in the first 6 months of the year? I see Dave nodding his head.
The first 6 months of the year? Wait a minute.
It will be completed in the fiscal year.
Right, so the first 6 months of the calendar year 2020.
Yes.
It might start sooner.
You may.
Yeah.
Okay, and then my second question is farther down. IP speaker clocks in all branches. I'm sorry, I don't understand. What is that?
I can help you with that. First of all, it's part of the phone system and intercom system. All of the branches have intercoms, that you can announce that the library is closing, bring your materials to the service desks, this kind of thing. And all of the branches have problems with their announcement or their systems. And so the speakers have IP clocks built into them. So like an IP phone system, but it's a speaker. So if they want to pick up the phone and make an announcement that is broadcast out throughout the branch, they can. Right now, some of them have working systems, some of them do not. The one at Petaluma, by way of example, and the one at Roner Park are both barely holding together. So that's what the IP speaker clocks are. Right now, we have facilities people that are going around and they're, every time we have daylight savings time or whatever, they have to go to the branch, get up there, change the clocks, that kind of thing. Now we'll be able to have the clocks on. They'll be talking to a server. the server updates the clocks for daylight savings time automatically. And then the IP speakers are just basically wired in speakers to the switches, and they're part of a piece of software that we have on the phone system already. We just have not deployed the public address system portion of it because we don't have working good speakers in the branches. They're all way older and won't work in concert with what we have right now.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Ken?
So then the staff will bring back the budget for approval at the May 6th meeting because I didn't really hear any changes that should be made to it. Okay, and so that'll be done then. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I passed out an information sheet regarding the recommendations on Sunday hours. We may be approached by the public. I've already had 2 emails concerned about not giving Sunday hours or not giving some options to those additional hours. And I wrote back using some of these points, and her response was, "Oh, now I understand. Good. That's very wise." So anyway, I thought it might help as you had to deal with people. So does anybody have any questions? And I did make a mistake. I had us opening 3 extra hours on Wednesday. It was only 1 extra hour, which changed the percentage to 35 from 40. So I cross out on all of your papers. I hope you can read it. So is there any questions? Are there any questions or discussion that we need to do on Sunday hours, just so we understand and we can give a consistent comment to the public?
Thank you.
Okay.
That's good.
Moving on to Fund Development Manager job description.
Okay, I can speak to that one. So based on the report from the fundraising consultants, one of their recommendations was to have a development person to work with the foundation and with the library. I've put together a recommendation for Fund Development Manager. You'll see the cover sheet on page 17 and the draft job description on page 19. And the thought is that this person will work with our foundation to build a strong foundation board that is capable of capital fundraising and advocacy, working in conjunction with the community relations manager. I'm also looking for someone who can do vigorous grant writing for the library and help us in many ways with our public-private partnerships. I think this is a position that will pay for itself very quickly in the long run and be of great benefit. So do you have questions about the position? Yes. Okay. Commissioner Zollman?
Oh.
Yeah, I did see that something about advocacy in something that I read about the potential job description. How do you see that playing out with the advocacy committee within the commission? I guess I'm just kind of questioning like the definition of advocacy and how much of a role they'll be playing.
Well, I think this person would be a very good choice to serve with the staff on the advocacy committee, and I can see the right person working closely, as I said, with the community relations manager, building relationships within the communities, also visiting with our elected officials. We need to have a strong front on many different ways of approaching not just the people who can donate to the library, but the people who can support and the people who can promote support for the library. So I think the right person could do well in all of those categories.
Okay.
Karen?
So I had a question under competencies about why the second bullet under competencies, what was the rationale for requiring so much experience regionally? Now, I understand that fundraising experts do need to know this information, and that it does take a while for them to spin up to speed, but I'm just wondering, are you sure you're going to be able to recruit in this area by requiring so much knowledge specifically of Sonoma County?
We'll see. I think it would be a very positive thing if we find somebody who's got that much experience. If we find somebody who has that type of experience from another area, I think it would help to translate. But ideally, this is what I'm looking for. Jason?
Yeah, I'm just, I look at this position, I see if I were to draw it with a center circle and then draw other positions around it, there would be a lot of overlap with other jobs. Mm-hmm. And I'm just not convinced on its necessity as stated. I would say I see it as a particularly grant writing. We hired the community relations manager for that purpose of advocacy and making those relationships with the community. So I don't even see that the primary role of this position. That's the community relations position. And I know also in the report, it recommended the foundation have its own staff. So I know, the ideal situation is the foundation hire its own staff, in which case if they did that, I'm just not, how is this position different from the primary role of the Library Foundation itself? And is my question. And then I guess my second question is grant writing enough to support this position in and of itself?
I don't believe grant writing in and of itself is enough to support the position, no. I think that this and Suzanne, were there, do you want to come down? We'll team up on this. Suzanne had some feedback about the relative merits of having this as a library position versus a foundation position.
So one of the things about if it's going to be a librarian position, a library funded position, then it can't be partially funded by the library and partially funded by another organization due to changes in contract regulations through CalPERS. So it either needs to be our position or their position, because the definition of contracting employment has gone away. There's been recent rulings in CalPERS law where we've tried to have an employee or another individual come on board and then work like as co-employee, and these types of things don't work. So it doesn't have to be fully funded as a 1.0 position, but it would definitely how we structure it. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question correctly.
I guess my question is, I just don't see the complete merits of the position. To be honest, at $130,000, have we discussed the foundation? If what their position is, if they're to work with this person?
I think one of the things that came up last week or 2 weeks ago in the report from the fundraising consultant was that the foundation currently at this time was not in a position to put this kind of person in their budget, neither that or had the position to grow or robustly work with that position at this time. And one of the things that the library was lacking was this ability to generate this fundraising, and that was something that was needed within the next few years. So again,
can I?
Me next.
Okay.
Okay. Me. Oh, hurry up. Sorry, hurry up. Oh, excuse me. I'll take my time, thank you. So I am concerned with our relation with the foundation. I would be concerned that we would have this position and the money would go to the foundation, even though it's our position, they're raising the funds, that the money would go to the foundation. I don't think we're there yet with the foundation to put a lot of money into the foundation. I don't think the foundation itself is there, as the report said. I would be very much for this position if we could somehow control the money and keep it within the library. And I think, and I've worked a lot with development people over time, and this would have to be someone that's full-time and would be paid adequately, because these people, the really good development people, are kind of rare, and they would be going to the university and working for the university. So I think this is a very important position. I think it's something that we've been lacking for a long time, and it works in coordination with our outreach to the community, bringing businesses to support the library. So I very strongly support this position and the way it's written, other than the money, making sure that the money stays within the library. And I know we're working on that.
Barbara's next.
So just a question to Commissioner Heavenridge. Are you suggesting we put this on hold until we have more clarification from the foundation? And then I'm going to ask my questions. Is that your suggestion?
No, my suggestion would be to go ahead with this position as long as we clarify that the money that's being raised by this position, the grants, and that stays within the library and doesn't go to the foundation, because of the issues we've been having with the foundation.
The grants absolutely stay within the library. The other monies, capital donations, annual giving, major gifts, I think should reside with the foundation, but it has to be adequately written so that we control it. But as long as they're holding the money, they can do additional things in terms of investing it that we're not allowed to do.
Yeah, and I'm saying right now, as the foundation is written, that may be a hard thing to do.
Right.
And so I would not be for giving money to the foundation until we've worked out our issues. Okay. Because I want the money to go to the library, not to other programs.
Right.
And that may just require, not that I'm an attorney or anything, right, but just a restructuring of the fund development policy, or however we have it structured, and also determined by the grants that we write. And I just want to also say that however you, in this draft form or some other form, again, if you approve this policy and we do put it on the budget, we may not recruit, we can delay the recruitment of it so that you feel like you want to fund it for 3/4 of the year or however. So just to keep that in the back of your mind, if you wanted to wait until you resolve some of these other issues, just so that we could approve it in the budget cycle. So those are just thoughts to consider.
Okay. Right, let's finish this end of the table. Barbara, do you have
just
more?
to finish. So I would be supportive of including this in the budget. There's a lot of clarification to be hammered out here. The foundation's bylaws. I mean, this whole interworking relationship, they're all a little fuzzy about. So I would suggest not posting anything until we have a lot of clarification. I would suggest that we add Commissioner Zollman's point about adding to the job description, working with the advocacy committee. And then I would also, just as kind of a picayune, but stuff that bothers me, down under competencies, it says knowledge of, and the first 5 things are definitely things they need knowledge of. Then you get down to creativity and developing. That's not knowledge of. So there's 3 things there that aren't. Those are qualities that we're looking for, but they're not knowledge of. And the same thing over, if you go one more page over, 1, 2, 3, 4. The first 4 are things you need knowledge of, and the next 3 are things that are qualities that we're looking for. So there just needs to be some, I don't know, it's not right as it's written. All that stuff is good, but it needs to be resorted out, and so it makes sense. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Tom.
I think this is vitally important if the library is going to move forward. We have to put our toe in the water. We have to start fundraising. This is all about fundraising. It's not about grants specifically. It's about getting out in the community. It's about hitting the rich people in this community, and there are lots of them. And as I said, I think at the last meeting, I think the first thing we do is go for Roseland. We have a Roseland committee that's out there. We set up a special fund with the foundation, and that's how you make sure the money is with the foundation, but they can't screw around with it. You have an agreement that it's used for this specific purpose. They can't use it for anything else. They go to jail if they do. I deal with this a lot in my work as a estate planning person, so I deal with funds. I am positive about the foundation because at last week's Sonoma Valley Lab and Friends meeting, a very nice lady came to our meeting from the foundation. And it sounds like she's good. I can't remember her name. I'm terrible at names. But she really has the idea that that's what they need to do. They need to be doing different things. So I have positive feedback there. The last thing I want to mention is on the page 17 here, because the library's comparator agencies lack a similar classification, you pick some other kind of thing. I think in terms of salary and job description and things like that, you should be talking to Community Foundation, Sonoma County, Santa Rosa Junior College, and Sonoma State. I know both the JC and the state have development personnel, and Community Foundation, Sonoma County is just all development entirely. And I've dealt with all of them, and they have people. I'm sure there are other, I can't think of it. I think Humane Society or somebody like that, they have people. They go to the meetings I go to 8 times a year for education and things like that. We have estate planning councils, Sonoma County Estate Planning Council. So I would look to them to make sure that we have enough money in there and that some of what you're asking for is appropriate. That's what I'd be doing. But I think this is absolutely vital. We have to go ahead this way. Thank you.
David, did you have?
Much of what has been said, I would have said. I think we should move ahead assertively here, and I certainly will would approve the draft without any changes.
Reese?
Well, I agree. I support this position totally. It's the first step in putting a whole lot of pieces together and straightening a whole lot of stuff out. I agree with Tom. The president and vice president of the foundation are absolutely into making that a real foundation and doing some things that need to be done with it. They're really behind that. They recognize the failings and the things that they need to correct. So I think that's important. But beyond that, this person can work with the Roseland Coalition. It can work with Lantern. It can work with the other entities that, let's see, there's a lab that holds money. There are some friends groups. I believe there's a friend group that holds some money that is dedicated to something that would be capital improvement. So we have all these kind of stray things out there, and this person can begin to pull them together, get everybody working in the right direction or in the same direction, and the library has a stake in that process. And I think that's really important, and that's why I'm supportive of this. So,
Jason?
Glad I sparked debate. So I would be for this position as long as it's not seen as adversarial to the foundation and worked in conjunction with the foundation.
In conjunction with the foundation.
Yeah. Is that the
it
purpose?
It reports to me.
Okay, as long as that's the purpose. And Ray, okay. Yeah, I'm good.
So that sounds like we all thumbs up or raise a hand, something? No, it's a discussion item, so we're just giving a support of it. Okay.
I support of, and I think I like some of Barbara's suggestions, and I would
cleaning it up a little.
Cleaning it up a little bit, okay. But I would definitely like the emphasis on Sonoma County that's in there, and I would like to leave that.
Okay. So anybody against it? All righty. So keep moving forward with that. Okay. Approving the authorized signers for the library bank account. I believe that there is a motion that is.
I so move.
And I second.
Okay, we got Hauser moving, and I think Zolman was seconding. Okay, so all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, passed unanimously. So now we're approving the salary schedule for SEIU represented positions to reflect the increase to the building mechanic 2 classification.
I motion to accept this proposal.
Second.
Okay, so Merrick made the motion and Evan Ridge seconded it.
Discussion?
Any comments or discussion? Okay.
I would just say it's well documented and seems appropriate to me, supportive of it.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passed unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Approving the library cards and borrowing policy. Okay. Was that Deborah that moved it? Okay, I wasn't sure that it was your voice. Okay, Doyle moved, Andy seconded, Elkine seconded. And any comments? Do you need to make some comments first? And then we'll ask questions if we need to. Staff report, yeah, that's the word. Thank you.
Sure. Good evening, Commission. Sarah Vantries, Public Services. We can certainly answer questions, but I did want to point out that this item and the next item go together. You will vote on them separately, but our schedule of charges obviously is related to the library cards and borrowing policy.
Okay.
With that,
I just have a comment. At first, I was really opposed to this. I come from a household that doesn't ask for forgiveness, nor does readily gives it, and is heavy on responsibility. But I do see that you made a compelling argument, and I understand the reasoning behind it. And you did have the safeguard in there, albeit at $100, that prevents any gross material negligence. So I'm happy with it.
Any other comments? Barbara?
Yes, just kind of one point is it's difficult to have, we don't really have the full changes. The changes that are highlighted are the changes from the last revision, which was, the original policy. But the original policy on page 32, our original policy current policy is 50 physical items. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So we're making a big change to 100 at the same time. And I still have this lingering concern about lucky day items and, the incentive. So I'd just like to watch those closely if we, pass this, which it sounds like we're going to. I also, forgot my other point. My tendency and I've been swayed by the various arguments, various discussions, and all of your research and all the different library systems that are moving in this direction. I'm not aware of any library systems that moved in both these directions at exactly the same time, doubling the amount of items you can take out and forgiving fines. And I was wondering if you had talked to any library systems that had done both of these at once.
Yeah, thank you for that question. We can give you a little background on the research that we did in coming up with this policy. We talked about it a little bit at your earlier April meeting. But in addition to gathering feedback from our own staff, we also relied on two major documents. One is a report that was created by the Office of the Treasurer and Tax Collector in San Francisco, along with the San Francisco Public Library in January. The report is called Long Overdue, Eliminating Fines on Overdue Materials to Improve Access to San Francisco Public Library. And that was a close look at what library systems are doing, in particular at 10 libraries that made the change to eliminate fines and what their results were. That report also identified in San Francisco at least an intersection between community poverty and blocked library cards. We also reviewed a white paper a few years back from the Colorado State Library entitled Removing Barriers to Access, and it was focused on eliminating library fines and fees on children's materials, but it took a look at kind of the whole ecosystem of library policies and how those policy decisions can reduce or reduce access or support access. How do you get the door open so that people can use your libraries? So in those, what we saw was, there are many policy decisions that a library can make. And some of the pioneering fine-free libraries, so to speak, kind of worked up to that ultimate decision by making those other decisions ahead of time. So for example, amongst our comparable libraries here in the North State, Contra Costa County Library, which has no overdue fines for materials, they had already increased their borrowing limit to 100 items, and it was a precursor to this big change. Another library in our list of comparable agencies is the San Mateo County Library System, and they actually completely eliminated a borrowing threshold. So their limit for borrowing truly is infinity, and they also charge no overdue fines at all. And there are other policy changes that these libraries made, again, either before or simultaneous with their elimination of overdue fines. So that could also include aligning checkout periods or changing the requirements for ID. We're in a position now, we're by no means the leading edge here with going fine-free and making these changes. And so we're really in a position to make several changes at once that we think will serve the community.
If I could just ask a follow-up question to that. My understanding is that San Mateo, I think they just did this in January. So they don't have any data yet.
That's correct. We did get some really great information from our neighbors in Contra Costa County. They are just finishing their first year of going fine-free. What they saw immediately was that circulation jumped, and they got a lot of items returned that they weren't expecting, even items that had been borrowed, 20, 30 years ago, where people were really afraid to come back because of those fines. In Contra Costa, they actually did a complete amnesty for all lost items, overdue fines, all fees. So everyone started fresh with zero balance. And at the end of this first year, what they're seeing is that overall in their system, circulation is up 8%. And like us, over the last few years prior, they saw circulation of physical items dropping a bit each year. Seems to be the trend, but suddenly that trend was reversed. And in some of their communities, they saw that circulation rate jump by 25% or more.
I can also add something to what Sarah has said. As Sarah mentioned, it really is a comprehensive package based on access. So we've given you a lot of comprehensive changes to the policy. In my previous work with Oakland Public Library, we abolished fines for youth, but also increased the borrowing limit for patrons, along with several other circulation changes at the same time. Many of the white papers that Sarah mentioned, they are tweaking their system, like notification of patrons to make sure we get those items back, increasing auto renewal. So although your question is asking for two distinct items in our policy, again, all of the entire changes in the policy are about access and how we provide that. And that's the same lens that other library systems are looking at through these changes. So while they might not have the budget or the materials to make that jump to 100 items, we feel it's in best service to our patrons. We have the resources to be able to provide them with that jump.
Stephen?
Yes, as I said before, thank you very much for doing this research, and I am just thrilled in the fact that it's like to be part of a body that's going to jump on the trend of reducing barriers for a lot of our marginalized parts of our community, and I can say that from being a San Francisco public defender and currently representing a lot of low-income folk. They rely on these services, and anything we can do to reduce barriers is much appreciated, so thank you.
Okay. Andy?
I would also like to agree, appreciate the thorough research and careful analysis that went into this, and thank you for articulating a very meaningful policy change, which I support enthusiastically.
Randall?
I'd like to revisit the idea of changing the checkout time for one DVD disc from 7 days to 21 days. I think that's going to have a horrendous effect on the wait time for all the people sitting out there waiting for new movies like Aquaman on DVD, that it's going to like triple the wait time on these queues.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's definitely a concern that we have as well. And what we're seeing from these other libraries that have made changes to increase access is that people who use the library a lot. People who wait for items that are on request are coming to the library frequently to get their new items. And so the goal with that would be, if there are, or the outcome of that with high demand items is that those are the items that are going to be in those long hold queues. And so the people that typically borrow them are folks who are coming to the library regularly. And so we could anticipate that they may be returning items faster than the 21-day loan period. On the other hand, for people who are not able to attend or to come to the library often due to where they live or barriers in transportation or the restrictive hours, this will standardize the loan period to make it easier for them to do sort of a one-stop shop. We actually, in the San Francisco report, again, this is not necessarily related to a change in loan period, but just overall, 100% of the libraries that San Francisco looked at saw no increase in late return, longer hold queues, or gaps in the collection. And actually, a couple of the libraries mentioned that late returns dropped somewhat. Some people feeling that before they didn't have to feel guilty about keeping something late because they could just pay their penalty to the library to keep that item a little bit longer. So again, you know, it's possible that there could be a longer wait, except that we will still maintain our collection holds ratio. And we've also reduced the amount of time that an item would wait on a hold shelf. So that should help us move through requests quickly as well.
I think Commissioner Neff raises a good point, but the research suggests that people are returning items faster with this change. But a great service enhancement would also be Lucky Day collections for those DVDs. So that's a great support by the Friends. People love walking into any branch or the branches that have DVDs at this point, but that's a great service enhancement we might think about doing, again, in partnership with our Friends.
And we currently do have Lucky Day DVDs in our budget.
But it's just the perception that it seems like you don't care about the people waiting on the whole queues for DVDs. It's more a perception issue than what the future might be in terms of numbers. That everyone I've talked to is like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to wait forever for my favorite movie. So that's my concern with that change in the policy.
Something we'll definitely be keeping an eye on if the Commission chooses to pass this policy. And again, it wouldn't change our holds ratio, which determines how many copies of popular items we buy in order to fill the need.
Hey, Any other? Okay, Tom.
I support the library cards and borrowing policy as written. I'm fine with it. I do have questions about the schedule of charges, and I very likely would vote against that. And so I'm not sure if that is a killer for both of them, or if we have a current library charge policy that would still be in effect.
Chair Foxton, would you support discussing the schedule of charges at this time as well?
Sure, we can discuss them now.
Okay. My concern is about the room fees. I'm on page 43, and you've cleaned up some of the language here, but you still don't have a definition of what a meeting is. Is that 3 hours, 4 hours, 10 hours? And I'm going to ask, have you run this by the branch managers?
So currently the rate has been set through our meeting room policy, which we are not reviewing at this time. And as I understand, that policy specifically did not define a meeting length. And I'm not sure of the decision making behind that, if there's anyone here who remembers, but that was a change that was made in that revision a few years ago that no longer defined a meeting time.
And we do remember your feedback from the last commission meeting about the defined meeting time. So the schedule of charges won't take effect until July. So we could still try to address that concern.
Did you run it by the branch managers?
We have run both things by the branch managers, and I do believe that was part of our discussion with them. But again, based on feedback, we could bring it back to them, or better define it.
I'd like them to comment specifically about that. One of my concerns about the for-profit entities, and this is specific to an organization that I supported a lot in Sonoma, the Vintage House, the senior center. They were renting space to what we in the business call trust mills. And they get a lot of senior people in, and they charge them X dollars, and maybe they're a lawyer, mostly they're not, and they create documents, and they get somebody to sign them and everything, and they have a lot of volume, and the question is whether that's the best service for the client. And I guess what I'm getting at is, by allowing somebody to use the library, we're implicitly approving what they're doing. And that's something I'd like addressed and some thought about. Should we be limiting who can use it, and how do we make it clear that this is not somebody we have approved in any way, if that's what our policy is? Because I like working with organizations that have pristine attitude in the community, and I think the library is clearly there. And I don't want that to be tarnished in any way. I don't want a scandal popping up, and those things happen. So I'd like that issue addressed.
I appreciate that concern, but those decisions would be in our meeting room policy, which we can certainly review. And again, the meeting time would be defined in that policy. So I think we could approve this schedule of charges, but we could indicate that the parameters for those meetings are set by our meeting room policy, which does include language to the effect that the library does not support or endorse users of the meeting room, but we're making them available to these different types of groups on an equitable basis based on our policy.
If you're going to limit the time of the meeting, wouldn't that have to be right here? So when they're shown this sheet of paper, they know they have 2 hours, 3 hours? I mean, that would be misleading, I think.
Yeah, so again, this doesn't say what the meeting length is, but the meeting room policy can say that.
And what I'm trying to say is, if it's not on this document and the branch librarian shows this to somebody who comes in, they're going to say, yeah, I'll be there at 10 o'clock in the morning and I'll leave at 8 o'clock at night. And then, you know, I don't think that needs to be here.
Yeah, that is our current policy. If the room was available and the group met the other parameters of the meeting room policy. They could use the room for the day.
Oops. David?
Yes, I don't think that that issue is properly before us. I think it belongs in the meeting room policy. I do have.
Sorry, you're speaking to the microphone.
Yes, I think that this issue is not properly before us. It belongs in the meeting room policy. I do like to point out there is one typographical error on page 43 in the yellow area. You've got Comerical, it should be commercial. The I and the C are reversed. Yeah, other than that,
Thank you.
I support this wholeheartedly.
Thank you.
Barbara?
2 comments. One comment, I support what Commissioner Hauser said. I really think it needs to be, the hours need to be on the schedule because it's too much look here and look there. It needs to be on there. Second thing is I just want to verify, because I brought up Lucky Day, I think 2 or 3 times, and to pony on to what Commissioner Neff said about the DVDs. It's a real concern. They're real popular stuff. 21 days, no fines. So I would really like to have a very soon report, really keeping an eye on it, and a very, in a few months. I mean, keep us on track with this. And I couldn't hear exactly what Lana was saying, but I believe what you're saying is if this starts blowing up our 4-to-1 ratio, very quickly we will ask, and we will go to the Friends and ask for more money to buy the popular items. Is that what I heard you say?
I suggested it as a service enhancement. That's a possibility. I mean, the Friends, have funds that they willingly give to the library, so it is a possibility for us to work with the Friends on a project like that.
Right, and I'm totally supportive of that. But I don't want to, so many people come to the library for these certain popular things, and I don't want to mess that up when, by this policy, so.
And just to clarify your request for what would you like reported on Lucky Day items?
What needs on the fee schedule is just what Commissioner Hauser said. It says $86 per meeting, and then in parentheses, a meeting is 4 hours or something.
Oh, no, I was clarifying your request for Lucky Day items. I wasn't sure what that request was.
And the DVDs, they're Lucky Day DVDs, right?
Does the request time increase?
Yes, because the request time has gone from 7 days to 21 days, so we keep a very, very close eye on the circulation of those, new items that are very popular, and rather than tighten up, let's just buy more of those things. We don't lease any DVDs, though, right? Obviously, because they wear out. We just lease the books.
That's correct. I just spoke with our collection services manager, and she confirmed that Lucky Day items are not included in that holds ratio. So if there's a holds list that's long, that's going to be filled by our regular circulating copies. The Lucky Day DVDs, regardless of how they have been funded, are on top of that. They're an enhancement. And so the bearing that it has in this conversation is that if someone finds their new DVDs on the shelf as Lucky Day items, then presumably they would not place a hold, or they would drop out of a holds queue since their request was filled through that other means. But it doesn't, we would still maintain our same ratio. If the holds queue is longer as a result of this policy, we will increase the number of items.
Go ahead, Deborah.
Just briefly, this is the schedule of charges, the policy of schedule of charges. There is also a policy for meeting room schedules. And this is on the agenda. We can certainly probably persuade staff to put the charges in, but we have to have a conversation about the meeting rooms before we change this. So perhaps we could approve this tonight, and then we can say that we will talk about the meeting room schedules later.
So my vision of this, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, please, is we pass this policy, we revisit the meeting policy, they basically stay in the books. They don't go out to the, we'll say, customers or the patrons. And we create a brochure that combines the necessary information from the 2 policies into one that we give to the customer. Is that what's going to happen, or am I wrong?
This is what we have now. So as Commissioner Hauser was pointing out, we want to make it easy for people to find the information. So we don't want to, point them from one policy to another necessarily, but typically people who are interested in using our meeting room are going to start with the meeting room policy, where we would be able to have this information side by side with that. They wouldn't typically start with the schedule of charges.
Okay. Jason?
So I think the motion on the floor still stands. And is it a combined motion to pass both the charges and?
I believe we have to do them separately.
We have to do them separately?
Yeah,
So only,
just because they're here separately.
the only motion on the floor then is now.
At this point.
At this point is which one?
What?
Yeah, we can, I think we.
Cards and borrowing policy.
Okay, so that's. That's
The
one.
borrowing cards, what is it called?
I move to call a question.
29. That's the one that's on the floor.
Question has been called.
Call for a vote.
So, okay.
Someone better make the motion.
Okay, just clarifying. Okay, so all those in favor of passing the library cards and borrowing policy, say aye.
Aye.
All those against?
Aye, or nay, or whatever.
Okay, so one nay is Randall, Neff. Everybody else is for it. Okay, since we combined the discussion, is there any more discussion on the schedule of fees? I know. Okay, motion in there, okay.
Yes. There's a typo in the motion itself, a one-word change. It should read, I move that the Sonoma County Library Commission approve the schedule of charges, not fees, as presented. I already ran this past Lana. She agrees it's a mistake.
Okay, yep, it's schedule of charges.
So I'd be happy to make the motion with that amendment.
So the motion was made by David Cahill. It was seconded, I believe, by Deborah. See, doesn't work every time. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those against?
Nay.
All right. So we had one nay, Hauser. Everybody else was for. Okay, moving on to the resolution to forgive fines.
Jubilee.
I'll move adoption to put forward for discussion.
Second.
All right, so McKenzie moved, Hauser seconded. Any discussion regarding the resolution?
Yes.
Okay. Barbara?
I moved approval so I could discuss this. I would like to have verification that this has gone through legal review and that we have the authority as public agency to, and this is just for the record, I'm not challenging it, but just for the record that we have completed legal review on this, and we do have the authority to forgive this significant amount of money.
Thank you, Commissioner. The answer is yes, and our legal counsel wrote the resolution.
Thank you.
Should I read the resolution for the record?
No.
I saw a yes and I saw a no.
I believe you could read it if passed.
Okay, so all those in favor of the resolution?
Aye.
All those against? Okay, unanimous passing. Okay, we're going to do the National Volunteer Month proclamation first, before the other one. So, I'll read the proclamation. Okay, so National Volunteer Month is April 2019. Whereas thousands of volunteers throughout Sonoma County make a positive impact every day on the county, its residents and their lives. Whereas key community volunteers support and advise the mission of the Sonoma County Library by serving on the Library Commission and the Library Advisory Boards. Whereas hundreds of friends groups group members volunteer thousands of hours a year organizing, planning, and staffing book sales. Whereas volunteers work at the library headquarters and the branches, shelving materials, mending books, fostering adult literacy, and assisting with events and programs. Whereas volunteering at the Sonoma County Library plays a key role in the lives of many Sonoma County teens during their high school years. Whereas the Sonoma County Library Foundation, the Roseland Library Coalition, and Lantern are run by volunteers who are committed to providing valuable support to the library's future. Whereas volunteers have been, are, and will always be a crucial aspect of the success of the Sonoma County Library. Be it therefore proclaimed that the Sonoma County Library Commission gratefully acknowledges and applauds its volunteers during April, National Volunteer Month. Okay.
Yay for us.
Yay for us. Yay for us. Yeah, it's important. Okay, and the last one.
So on your reading, you made the motion?
Did we make a motion? It didn't call for a motion.
Yeah, it does.
Thumbs up.
It just said read and approve a proclamation. Okay, I do need to have it approved. Okay. So those approving say yes?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Those against? Okay. So unanimously approved.
Can I vote against the next one?
You're voting against the next one. Okay. Does somebody want to move that the Sonoma County Library Commission adjourn today's meeting
so
in
move.
honor of Ken?
I
Paul
move.
Heavenridge, and there's a yell for second. Doyle seconded.
Who made the first motion?
Paul Heavenridge.
I moved.
Ken, could we have you come down here? I know this is not what you want, but it is what we want.
Eisenberg. I had to make the motion because Ken is from Michigan and I'm from Michigan, so it's a Michigander thing, you know.
And I'm going to read the resolution into the mic this time, unlike with Susan. Whereas Ken Neiman was the Sonoma County Library's Chief Financial Officer from May 2014 to April 2019, sharing his expertise and knowledge with the Commission and library staff. And whereas Ken kept a steady hand on library finances through several changes in leadership, providing the Commission with reliable information and thus enabling the Commission to make prudent financial decisions. And whereas Ken has been an essential member of the operations management team through its many iterations, and whereas Ken acted as library staff to the Commission Finance Committee, advising and mentoring committee members as they navigated the complexities of library finances and formulated recommendations to the Commission. And whereas Ken guided and oversaw the library through 5 successful audits, further establishing a stable and verifiable financial environment. And whereas Ken served as library staff to the Measure Y Oversight Committee, conveying essential information to the committee and assisting in the annual report generation, enabling the public to see how sales tax funds have been spent and the impact of these funds on library services in the community. And whereas Ken went above and beyond his designated financial duties, taking on oversight of the Cloverdale building renovation, providing knowledgeable support as Northwest Branch was renovated, and plans were put in place for the Petaluma renovation. And whereas Ken has served the Sonoma County Library with distinction, commitment, reliability, and good judgment. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Sonoma County Library Commission that the members of the Sonoma County Library Commission hereby express their heartfelt gratitude and thanks to Ken Neiman, adjourning this budget meeting on this day in his honor for the significant contributions he has made to the Sonoma County Library and through that work to the people of Sonoma County. Thank you. And here is your... We gotta have a photo op, Ken. I love you.
There you go.
Yeah, you guys all get together, do a photo.